All right, this session is being recorded and I'll get started. Well, greetings everybody. My name is Lauren Marsh. I am an academic technologist from the University of Minnesota, and I am also one of the chairs of Unizin's Faculty Development Subcommittee, and I am so pleased to be here today with Christina Bofalco and Heather Manis, and we would like to talk with you about the Stepping Stones curriculum. This is a faculty development curriculum for learning analytics that has been developed by members of the Unizin Faculty Development Subcommittee. This is a cross-institutional effort to prepare faculty to use learning analytics data ethically, effectively, and equitably. So the first version of the pilot was, piloted in spring 2023, and we used feedback from the pilot to create the second version. I'll share with you information about our initial effort, and Christina and Heather will tell you more about the pilot evaluation process and what's new in version 2. We're especially excited to be making this publicly available in Canvas Commons as of this morning. Some context: when we started, we agreed to situate this work within Canvas because across our institutions, that's what we had in common. And we also agreed to focus on learning analytics, new analytics in Canvas, because again, across our institutions, this is the foundation that we could build on together. So Christina, do you want to open that first poll?
Yeah, so we have a few polls kind of scattered throughout the presentation, and the QR code is here, and Heather put the link into the chat as well, which you can get to by clicking on the live stage, and there should be a chat within there. And when you go in, if it gives you a little thing saying register for credit, you could just say skip for now. We're not gonna monitor your responses or anything like that. But if you keep it up in your browser on your phone or in your computer, we're gonna have about 3 different polls kind of scattered throughout. So here is the first one. So have you heard of Stepping Stones before? No, I know it's a faculty development curriculum for learning analytics, but that's it. I have reviewed some of the curriculum. I have reviewed all of the curriculum. I have used some of the curriculum or other. And I see we have some responses coming in. Great. So it definitely seems like the majority with us today know that, know what Stepping Stones is basically, but that's really it. So that's great that you're here today and can really start to take a look more at, dig a little bit deeper into the curriculum and see how it could help you and your institution. So welcome everyone.
And Christina, if you'll give us that next slide. I'd like to share some background about this project. So the Faculty Development Subcommittee took up this initiative in 2021. And at that time, we imagined it was a matter of gathering workshop materials that our members were using at their institutions and then massaging them into a curriculum. But we discovered that by and large, those materials did not yet exist. So we had to create them. And so we embarked on a much more intense process than we imagined. So what I'm showing you here is an artifact from a brainstorming session with the Unizin Teaching and Learning Advisory Group from May 2021. We got people into breakout rooms and we asked them to respond to the question, what do faculty need to know about learning data? So that's where we started. Next slide. And at the same time, we organize what we call structured conversations with faculty. We ask faculty across our institutions to address this question: what information about students' digital course activity and performance, or course activities and content would be useful to you in order to support teaching and learning. So we had 7 institutions participate in this activity, and we synthesized that faculty feedback from across participating institutions and used it to identify themes and priorities. So you're looking at a high-level dashboard of the feedback that we received from faculty. And next slide. And so all of this information that we gathered informed the Stepping Stones curriculum. And here are the 5 modules that we developed. So getting started with learning analytics, that describes what is learning analytics, and it addresses ethical use of learning data and its limitations. Beginning of the term, that's how to use data to assess student readiness for the course, and to create a strategy for using learning analytics during the first 4 weeks of class. And the assessment module walks faculty through review of course assessment data and helps them create a plan to inform course improvement. And it also gets into quiz statistics and helps determine whether a quiz question accurately measures student learning. Then engagement helps understand how Canvas data describes student engagement and helps identify student engagement patterns in the data. And then finally, this last module, learning analytics in context, review, amend, apply. So that's pulling it all together. It's a holistic approach to using learning analytics over the life cycle of a course. And the next slide. All right, I want to introduce you to the blueprint, which is really the spine of the Stepping Stones curriculum. So you read this table from left to right, and in the leftmost column of the blueprint, you've got some foundational instructional questions, and then it provides a structured approach to exploring these questions with Canvas learning data and traditional classroom techniques, and then it suggests appropriate action. So there is a section of the blueprint that aligns with each module. Our materials are really intended to accommodate a variety of audiences, goals, modalities, workshop structures, and outcomes. They are designed to be used by workshop facilitators. So speaking to you workshop facilitators, once you've viewed these resources, we encourage you to establish your workshop goals and then organize and adapt these resources in support of your goals. Most resources are delivered as Canvas pages, and then you might use this content to create discussions, quizzes, assignments, or synchronous activities, depending on your needs. So while this iteration of the content focuses on Canvas and the new analytics tool, much of the content can apply to other LMSs and faculty-facing tools as well. And next slide. This is our shock and awe slide, which is not meant to be read so much as it is meant to give you a sense of what it means to work across institutions. Many people contributed to this work, and if you show that next slide, these folks represented many different institutions, and here's the list of institutions that contributed to this effort. And I would like to turn it over to Christina, who's going to talk about the pilot evaluation.
Thanks, Lauren. Hi, everyone. I'm Christina Bofulco. I'm at Rutgers University. I'm the Associate Director for Teaching and Learning Analytics. And I'm really excited to talk to you a little bit about our pilot and the evaluation of that pilot, right? So the purpose of the evaluation was to really understand what was working well within the curriculum, what were the gaps, what needed to be updated or changed or added. So the the curriculum was piloted in fall 2022, and the majority of institutions actually used it in spring 2023, and it was used by 7 different institutions. So we did the evaluation in the summer of 2023, and we used mostly qualitative methods for that evaluation. And we had a group of our subcommittee members who were engaged in thinking about, what was version 2 of the Stepping Stones curriculum going to look like, but first really focusing on this evaluation. So we actually had all of the facilitators that use the curriculum. We had 2 of the subcommittee members interview them over summer 2023. They were recorded and notes were taken. And the subcommittee members also developed the protocol and the questions that we asked during the interview. We asked all of the facilitators to do a little show and tell for us as well, so that we could see the different resources that they used, that they changed, that they modified, that they developed for their workshops or their other offerings. And then we also had the notes of those interviews organized by a third person. So we had a lot of different people kind of looking at these interviews and kind of thinking about what those main themes were. So then we were able to review all of the notes from the 7 interviews and generated themes that kind of came out across about, what worked, what still was needed within the curriculum, and kind of directed our work for version 2 from there. So one of the big things that we found within the evaluation that I truthfully was a little bit surprised about, but I guess I shouldn't have been, was just the variety of modality approaches. So we had some institutions that were utilizing a live webinar approach. So this was one. It was typically done with as an introductory session, like an intro to learning analytics. It was usually an hour or 90 minutes. And this one was very much a webinar in the sense of, they kind of used a slide deck. They might have had some examples within the slide deck, but they weren't using any data for faculty to kind of look at. The next kind of realm that we themed together was workshops. So there were a lot of different institutions that utilized workshops, and these could be either virtual or in person, or a combination of the two. But they were sessions that include goals and activities, and that's really how we kind of again, some of the workshops were virtual, but how we divided that webinar and the workshop was just the level of activity. So participants were engaging in using learning analytics data, and this is where we found that they were either utilizing their own data, or some institutions had developed a demo course with manufactured data that could be used by participants to look at the data within their courses, within this demo course. And then other institutions created faculty learning communities or communities of practice. And the definition of those were a little bit different across the institutions, but these were typically a cohort model, and they had either multiple workshops or multiple meetings of the cohort spaced throughout a semester or the academic year. And there was a lot of discussion, there was a lot of sharing. A lot of the modules ended up being the kind of foundation of that community, but then the community of practice tended to really dig into instructors' questions, what they wanted to look at, and it was very much a self-directed project in a way for faculty to engage in. This one really did need participants to have access to their own data, and there were typically deliverables, right? So they were looking for implementation, faculty implementation of how they're going to use this information. It was also really interesting to hear the different institutions, how they chose between these different modalities. And it was very much context specific, right? So it was, well, we had a conference coming up, so it seemed easy to just do a hour session on the introduction of learning analytics as a webinar, right? So there was a lot of different choices that the institutions, very context specific, that they used to kind of make that decision about which approach to use. So the main things that kind of came out that were helpful. So facilitators mainly used modules 1 and 2. And as Lauren said, that module 1 was really the introduction to learning analytics that talked about the questions that it could be used to address, the limitations of learning analytics. And then 2 is really looking at, module 2 was looking more at like the beginning of the term, right? So if we're thinking about instructors within the first couple of weeks, what might they want to look at? Most of the facilitators noted that the guiding principles were really helpful to them. And the other piece that the majority of the institutions used was the blueprint. And as Lauren was kind of talking about, we thought about that a lot as the spine. And I think that actually came from thinking about, what came out of that evaluation, and so many of the institutions saying, the blueprint was the most beneficial thing for faculty. The other thing they did say, though, was that there was a lot of customization across the entire curriculum, but in particular, the blueprint as well. So this is just an example of what that customization kind of looks like. So here you can see the blueprint, and institutions did alter the columns, right? So originally there were 5 columns for the blueprint. Some institutions kind of scaled that back. And then they also added in institution-specific tools, like here we have adding in that MyLA, the My Learning Analytics, that is a student-facing dashboard. So a lot of institutions did that customization work within the curriculum and within the blueprint as well. Now, one of the things that kind of came out of this as well was that there are a lot of other tools that institutions are using, right? And they might be something like MyLA. They might be a tool that, as Lauren kind of said, there was this decision to really focus on new analytics within Canvas because that was what was available across all the institutions. But institutions found that there are a lot of other tools that faculty are using, and therefore they wanted to address within their offerings. So just kind of wondering, what other tools do you find that faculty use that generates data that would assist faculty in understanding student progress in their courses? So if you go back to that Poll Everywhere browser, you should have this question up now. And I do see one response coming in, so that makes me feel better. Yeah, hundreds. Okay, so Top Hat, integration, outcomes, PlayPosit. Yeah, I love PlayPosit. We have that at Rutgers as well. Packback, polling, right? Kaltura, right? So there's a lot of other tools that faculty are using that may not be across all of the institutions, but are worth taking some time to kind of put within the curriculum, which is what we found that a lot of the institutions did. And this was one of their suggestions. We asked all of those facilitators, hey, if you're going to give suggestions to other institutions that are thinking about using the curriculum, what would you tell them? And one of the big ones, which most of them did, was make connections to your institution-specific tools, right? So if you're using Kaltura, if you have a lot of faculty using PlayPosit or Top Hat, right, that you are providing some examples specific for that for faculty. The other big suggestion is don't get overwhelmed. Okay, and this comes from the fact once you download the curriculum from Canvas Commons, it can be a little bit overwhelming. There's a lot of content there, but the suggestion was to pick one module and build off that to really think about what your institution's goals are, and then build off that to meet those goals. You can also start by looking at what other institutions have done, and there are some examples of that. And then make sure that you are taking that time to customize it for your needs and your context. And this is this was across the board. I don't think there was one of the institutions that changed nothing. We are assuming that institutions are going to change this to make it the most worthwhile for them. So the suggestions for improvement, there were quite a few, and this was really what we used then to decide moving forward for that version 2, what we were going to focus on them. So we have made progress on a lot of the suggestions that were given, and Heather is going to talk about that now.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I'm Heather Manis, and I'm the Assistant Director for Learning Analytics and Assessment at the University of Florida. And we got to pilot the stepping stones. I helped develop it. I piloted it a couple times and we changed it each time, doing that customization. And also because I was involved with this version 2 and I got to hear all of the cool ideas from other institutions. So I think that was awesome. That really improved the product greatly. So when you're experiencing it for the first time in version 2, there are a lot of nice enhancements that I think you'll benefit from. So the first one is that we enhanced the how to get started section and put a little bit more context around those different delivery formats for people so they can make their decisions about what they might want to use and from the curriculum and how they can kind of package that up in different iterations. And I will add that I have also done a few one-off presentations to different departments at my university, and I've just sort of repackaged what I have done from especially module 1. That's a lot of critical content, but then there's some sprinklings from the other modules. But once you kind of do it once, you can repackage it a lot, I think, for a lot of different other contexts too. So you might be doing multiple versions of these things. So it is a lot to sort of get into the material at first and familiarize yourself with it. But once you do it once, then it's, I think, the doors sort of open to how you can utilize it thereafter. So the next big addition that we added to the content is this addition of module 1 as an asynchronous module. And this was something that a lot of people I think a couple of people did, but most people were like, I wish I would have kind of afterthought reflections. And that was because there was a lot of that information dissemination going out and not an opportunity to utilize that live time that they were having with faculty to be productive and apply it in more of a workshop format. So, so this asynchronous module really gave people an opportunity, will give people an opportunity to do some pre-work before you get into that live time so you can better utilize that live time with your participants. And there are some activities in here. People liked the activities. We're looking for a few more. So there's a reflection activity to make this asynchronous module a little bit more engaging. And then another big add is that there are some multimodal engagement options for the content. Where we used to mostly have pages with written text, there are now more video options as an alternative format to help with that multimodality, that UDL, Universal Design for Learning component. So, so this is an example here where you'll see in the module, there's a watch it tab or a read it tab that has basically the same information in those different versions for people to choose between. And then where there wasn't sort of ready-made videos like this one, the YouTube video, there's also some recordings from mini recordings that cover some specific topics that were produced for you as part of this this new ad, which was a nice addition too. And then Christina was previewing for you. Go ahead. Thank you. The other addition is the scenario applications, where we put in some specific examples of how you would start to move towards that application phase of learning analytics. So in this example, there's a little prompt about, oh, you're interested in engagement reports. Here's what you might do. You might download it. If you were going to take this to the next step, you might do some correlations, you know, data analysis on that engagement report information that you've got. So then moving on to the blueprint, as Christina mentioned, it was customized a lot, and one of the takeaways was it was a little overly complicated. There was a lot of information, a lot. That was the theme for sure. But specifically here, working with the participants, it was getting overwhelming. People were a little confused about which part is which. So we simplified it to just the 4 columns, drawing on those reflection questions. Then you move to your initial instructor actions. So the examples would be listed there based on those reflection questions. Then the next column, looking for that data. And then what are you taking as an action in response to that data? So consolidated that down across those steps and provided some tips and guidance on how you might customize it. So there's new content there for examples of how you might customize it. Made some minor language changes throughout, and then did a weekly template. And this was an awesome idea from Iowa that we stole and added in for all of you. So taking the blueprint model and then creating a worksheet template for participants where they can think about some of those key reflection questions and have some examples for each of those columns in a week-by-week format throughout the semester. And so that creates a nice little activity and takeaway for your participants to keep engaged with this over time, because it's a lot and they're not going to be learning analytics experts all at once. So this is a reference point for them to go back to make their notes throughout the semester, to remind themselves at the beginning of the next semester, what was it that I was going to do? So in keeping with sort of that traditional best practice of taking notes about what's happening throughout the semester, here's a little template worksheet for them to focus on the learning analytics reflection questions. So that was, I think, stellar idea that we were able to incorporate into the version 2. Then the next ad is the demo course shell. And this is because there were a fair number of participants that did not have teacher access in a Canvas course shell with student data so that they could follow along and look at the new analytics in their own courses. And in order to get them the access they needed to really start to apply the principles in the course, it seemed like the best course of action was to manufacture that data in a faux course. And so the steps of creating a demo course and then manufacturing that data are more complicated than you might initially think. So this little gift is its own separate course that has been added into Canvas Commons so that you can download a course shell that has modules with page of activities, assignments, quizzes, things like that. And then a guide for how you might assign student workers or staff members or a combination thereof to be your fake students and manufacture data across different levels of participation. So your top performer, your mid performer, your bottom performer. So then you have in the end some data in new analytics to look at with participants. You can then enroll them in that course as teachers so that they can then see that data of those fake students and what that looks like with a manufactured experience. So those facilitation instructions and the course itself is also, the course is in Canvas Commons separately, but then the notice about it and the instructions for it and things like that are part of the version 2 update to Stepping Stones. So next up are slide decks. Slide decks that were a recurring theme of, you had a bunch of great content on pages, but I wanted to use it in a live workshop. I needed to transform that into slide decks. So because most people focused on piloting with the beginning of the content, that's where they spent the meat of their time, that's where we had material to draw from for our slide decks. So we had a slide deck, I think we had 2 slide decks in module 1 and 1 and 3. So we added a slide deck for module 2, and then we expanded on the slide deck in module 3 to include some new quizzes information that's similar to classic quizzes, quiz statistics, the new quizzes reports, and what that looks like, since that is becoming a more popular tool. Although I will say, from our committee discussions about it, there's not a lot of hot commitment to it yet. And in helping to work on that particular section myself, there are also still so very much some challenges with new quizzes that don't present themselves with quiz statistics. So it's a starter piece, but that certainly will need to be updated since the new quizzes updates from Canvas are rolling out so frequently as well. But we've got something to get you started now, which is a good piece. And then next, we added Mila. We talked about Mila. We talked about what to include. And, Christina showed you that slide with all of your responses about all the different tools that you could add. Here are all the different types of analytics that you could add to your course. And there were certainly some front runners like Top Hat or Play Pause It that lots of people had and were interested in. And it's a lot to do these, to pull together all of this information and this and that. So we focused on what's in Canvas, and Canvas was the unifying structure for us. So we focused on new analytics, focused on quiz statistics, things like that. So on the first round, we decided not to include Mila, but Mila is something that we have access to as part of the Unison Consortium. So it seems remiss not to include it as part of this working group. And it is available on GitHub. So it is open access to a lot of people. So as we were thinking about shifting it to more public access through Canvas Commons and things like that, it seemed important to add Mila here as well. So we already had a focus in the course on fostering student self-regulation of learning. And with that, we had an assignment for self-assessment and calculating grades, and to make sure there was transparency between what the student was seeing and expecting to happen for their analytics and their data with, what you as an instructor might be seeing and thinking and happening and expecting. And so with the promotion of the idea that we're gaining student buy-in into this process with learning analytics, and we're using learning analytics to help students directly and taking the power to the people, right? Like taking the data right to the people that need it most. Mila fit in really well with that component of the course and giving people an alternative for how they might start to engage students more openly with what their data says and what it might mean and how they can use it to help them learn. So I thought that was a really important upgrade that we did. And then last but not least is the whole course got reviewed for accessibility. We used Ally to help assist with that, as well as manual power. Shout out to Jeannie, who was working in the last minutes to get us live and ready for you all and available, because there's nothing like a deadline of a presentation to get it ready and available. So thank you very much. We had a lot of updates to do. It was a lot of things that I think each institution was tackling on their own, and now those are baked into the original product, which is great. So there's a list of a few of those updates too, and we went through that process for the demo course as well, and so that Ally score shot through the roof, and now meets the Quality Matters standards, and beyond, which is important and helpful, I think, for a lot of different people in different contexts. So before I talk you through exactly how to access it, we have one more poll. So I'm stalling, really wallowing in the suspense here. But we did want to ask just one more question to see what was resonating from this presentation for you, to what you think might be most valuable when you apply it to your institution. And I was happy to see there were so many people who haven't even used it yet. I thought we might have a bunch of people who had already started, but there's a lot of newbies. So hearing it for the first time, what are you most excited about? And I see the chat. There's been some great additions from our team members. Thank you. Nobody's excited. Okay, we won't share it. We'll just stop the presentation. Asynchronous demo course. Mila. Yeah, awesome. Cool. All right. So how to access version 2. You want to go to Canvas Commons. So if you can advance, Christina, this is a screenshot of what it looks like from my version of Canvas. So Commons is over there in that blue bar on the far left. And then once you click into Commons, your key term is going to be stepping stones, and that will filter down so that you will see these two courses. Now, the first one that's loading there, you'll note in the title for that course that it says demo, and it's going to have fewer downloads because it is brand new off the press. The next to it is stepping stones, and that had our original course that we just updated straight to. So that's got more downloads. You'll see that that course has more activity. You will also see in the blue circle on the right, I noticed that when I logged into Canvas Commons, if I had favorited the original version, it pops up that there has been an update, and then there's some update notes there too. So that's another nice feature of Commons that I found. If you are forgetting where it is, we can direct you through the Unison website for how to get to it. So this Unison website, on the products page of the Unison website, is the Unison resources site. And so when you click on that, then you will come to the Unison resources website. And so on the next screen, Christina, this is the resources website. And then if you sort of follow that breadcrumb trail of support and training, professional development, stepping stones, you'll get to a page that has an access to that Canvas Commons component. It'll access directly to it. You'll still need to log into your Canvas Commons, but at least there's a note there about how to do it. And it has all of the information for the people that worked on it too. So if you need to reach out to us, you can find us, and then we'll continue to post little updates on that page as well, like resources from, this presentation and the slide deck, things like that. So there will be a lot of continued resources to come from there. We'll keep everything housed there for people. And with that, I think we can take questions if anyone has them.
Just want to make sure that all of you have found the chat. Click on live stage. You're going to find links to this content, and you can put your questions in there. or are people able to open a mic?
I think we have to bring them on stage then.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah, Jennifer, hope you enjoy it and let us know, how it goes.
Yeah, Brad, thinking about Quick Start. Yes, so I have done some presentations where people wanted a quick start. And I pushed back on that a little bit into I can't start too quick if we don't have a solid foundation of learning analytics principles and use cases in the course. So we draw on those Unison principles that were developed a few years ago now, and those are in the course. So we draw on that. So I've sort of packaged up a different version of Stepping Stones where I start with that foundational framework. And then I give them a choice. Either I have to kind of give them an orientation to new analytics, or they have to do pre-homework for new analytics. And I'm still going through the phase of which one of those choices is more successful. But usually you need some sort of like primary orientation to new analytics. And then I would say kind of focusing on a strategy like a top question, which Lauren found in the pre-work that she had done about what instructors want, is something like, have they looked at the syllabus, right? So you use a scenario question like that and frame, this is how you would do that. And that sort of lays the seed of, there is good stuff here. You're going to want to spend more time with it, and you're also going to want to help. And I'm here for consultation. And that's sort of how I've structured those very quick intros.
And I'd also like to address that that notion of where do you start. And Christina, maybe you could go back to the slide which just lays out the different like doors to entry that folks piloted, and we're getting there. Like one way to start would be a webinar, just a simple webinar. Some people did even like a 30-minute webinar or 60 or 90 minutes. And then even as a facilitator, scaffold this experience for yourself. You don't need to do it all at once, but I think actually a webinar is a great way to get grounded in the content, and then gradually step into more engagement with your faculty.
Mm-hmm. Common goals for faculty. Some are curious about the data and what to do. Some are working through Quality Matters reviews and are looking to improve things, and so are having conversations about alignment there, and we're bringing in some of the data pieces as they're going through their review process and updating their courses. I would say that's been our primary driving factors for learning analytics.
And as to the question on do we know about the impact of the curriculum on our faculty, I would say that to date, our focus has really been on getting feedback from facilitators about how to strengthen the curriculum and tighten it up. So I think that that work lies ahead of us to work with our faculty and figure out an evaluation protocol to get that kind of feedback. It's a good question.
Yeah, and Brad, that's actually one thing that I've really been thinking about as I'm planning on piloting the asynchronous module, right? How can I incorporate that evaluation and follow up with faculty to see if they're really utilizing and moving, using learning analytics moving forward?
Yeah, and I would say that's kind of true with any professional development endeavor, right? Like how much were they able to take away and really apply for it? It's hard to collect that data. Even though we do surveys, the response rate is in the toilet. So how do you know? I would say one thing is I've gotten invited to do more presentations, so like someone attends and then someone invites me to a department or to a college or things like that. So there's definitely been interest from that side where you get these spin-off versions of it based on what people are seeing, which is encouraging. And definitely for social activities, Karen. That's part of my role. And so what I put in my pitch when I'm teaching it is, you know, you're going to have questions, you're going to need more help. So this is the starter for you to come have a consult with me later. And that's really added a lot to, you know, beyond just what's in stepping stones. And then we go into, okay, well, here's what I can pull from the UDP from you. Here's what we can do. Like, let's set up an IRB, that kind of work.
I'm noticing that we're at time, correct? We go to 1 o'clock my time, but we're top of the hour here.
Yeah. Please feel free to reach out to us if you guys have any more questions.
Thanks so much for joining.
Thank you, everybody. I just want to say thanks again, Christina and Heather. Awesome to put a bow on this project. It's been a long journey.